Hello. How's everybody doing today? You all right? Okay, so I'm very aware that you guys have just had pizza, and I've got quite a context-heavy talk to you about, so I hope I don't send you guys to sleep. I haven't used this before, so let's see what happens. Nice, right. This is me. I'm a senior product designer, currently in interview stages. I was unemployed, startup life, yeah. So I've been a designer and mentor for about 15 years in different guises of print and UX and UI and all that jazz. Worked on some really cool projects in my time for the Bank of England and Boston University and University of London, and yes, startups. So come talk to me about that afterwards. Also have a meetup, which Sal, thank you very much. Where are you? Okay, she's gone. She's allowed me to actually talk about. So I've got a meetup called UX Isn't Just Design, It's ... So go check that out. Anyway, enough of that, because that's not interesting. Today, I want to talk to you about trust and how trust in tech has the potential to become broken. And it's something that I think that we should all be starting to think about and talking about between ourselves and hopefully doing something about. So, I'm going to break it up into kind of 4 parts. The past, the present, the future, and what we can do about that. So we're going to talk about how we've come to this point, and then our current reality of what that past has done to where we are, the current reality, and then looking at the future. I'm sure you saw that the word quantum was in the title, so we're going to be talking about quantum computing, and then what we can do as designers. So before I start, okay, hands up. Who's a designer? Okay. Who is not a designer? Haha, right, okay. What do you do?
Software engineer.
Software engineer. I was going to say social engineer. You're going to come in for a grilling, my friend. Who else? What else does people do? PM. You're a PM. Cool. Prime Minister. So, cool. So we got and we got any developers? Obviously developers, more developers. Okay. Any people, business people from the stakeholder side of things? Oh yeah, excellent. We've got a nice little group of people. So, like I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the past. So it's going to be quite context heavy. So brace yourselves, strap in. We're going to talk about the tech utopia of self-stabilizing systems. Yes. Okay. So, hands up. Who uses social networks? Okay. Who doesn't? I saw that you didn't put your hand up. So you. Okay. So, who doesn't use social networks? Is there anybody who wants to be brave enough to? Okay. Cool. Fair enough. That's all good. So, at the heart of most social medias, most social networks, is self-regulation, and the idea that we should be allowed to fulfill our own desires and basically express ourselves however we like. The question is, that seems like a given. It's so much of a given that we don't question it. But why is that? How did we get here? So I'd like to show you a video, first off, of an experiment that was created in 1991. This was the culmination of thinking across Silicon Valley that thought that self-regulation was the way forward and it should be part of a utopian ideal in technology. This kind of self-governing approach became known as the Californian ideology. And it became this guiding principle behind tech in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And the thing is about it is that it's bled into the products we use every single day today in the social networks, and as well as the thinking within big tech giants. So thank you for your patience with that video. I know it's rather long, but it's kind of important. So, current reality. So, we'll talk a little bit about the kind of current situation with those tech giants. The thing is, to make money and keep the lights on, they had to become advertising portals. And to be an advertising portal, you've really got to work with algorithms that actually may push you towards more extreme content. That's been proven in studies in Brazil. So the problem is that life is full of nuance and context. And that doesn't break through. And that's a problem. Because then it creates polarization. And, media, I mean, these are mainstream media, but like, media in general, new and old, kind of only really report about extreme use cases. And this kind of creates this perpetuating frenzy of outrage and polarizes people and doesn't really help the way that people perceive tech. This is a quote from Simon Jenkins from The Guardian, and I know The Guardian is very leftist. It's kind of irrelevant in this respect because he was talking about regulation and how regulation should be employed. But he was what's interesting about this quote is that it kind of gives the perspective that everybody seems to have about tech within the media. It's never like, it's not a day passes without the apocalyptic wails of against the internet. It enriches a tiny few, dodges taxes, respects no borders, and forces millions out of work. Fun. So regulation, the thing is about, so he was calling for regulation. And the problem with that is that regulation and surveillance kind of has this perception of going hand in hand. Doesn't necessarily need to be the case, but it does. And for people to sell papers or to sell advertising in media and politicians to sell their votes, topical, then they go to the extreme of sweeping regulation changes. They may not even be practical because of the internet being, by its very nature, international. But the concern is, regulations crossing over to surveillance with, things like the Snoopers Charter and PRISM in the US. And to lighten the mood, here's Theresa May. Oh, look at her go. Right. So the thing is that there's this kind of like, it seems to be this conflation of like regulation with censorship and surveillance. And this is from a research paper by Jonathan Penny of the University of Toronto. And he said that with internet regulation and censorship on the rise, note that censorship and regulation is conjoined there, it's absolutely connected. Concerns that regulations or state surveillance, once again, can deter people from exercising their freedoms on the internet have taken on a greater urgency and public importance. And I think that's very true. So, we've talked about the past, we've talked about the present. Fun, isn't it? And now let's talk about the future, quantum computers. I'm sure most of you have seen the fact that Google announced that they achieved quantum supremacy. I'm not going to go into the details of quantum computing because it's complicated, like lots of people's relationship statuses. So the key thing to remember here is that processing power increases exponentially compared to traditional computing. Even the most powerful supercomputer in the traditional sense will not be able to hold a candle to quantum computers. So this is a big deal, a very big deal. I mean, what can they do is a question you can ask. Highly complex database searches, with processing power so much, so great, then that's an obvious one. Calculating weather systems, system simulations like weather systems, sorry. And then machine learning and AI, that's kind of an obvious one that most people will probably go towards. And then creating safer encryption is also part of that. That's just some of the uses. Excuse me. But who has these quantum computers? There she goes again. We've got governments, politicians, and tech companies. These are the people that haven't really got a great deal of trust in from a public perception point of view right now. Sorry. So, to summarize, quantum computers can potentially make surveillance easier. Well, it definitely will be able to. And outdated ideals of tech self-regulation, combine those two together and you have a potential erosion of trust in tech as a whole. So thank you for your patience. That was the real history lesson and kind of part of the situation. What I want to talk about now is what we can do about it. What we can actually do about it. And facilitating trust, because the theme of tonight was about facilitation of designers. It's all about honest design. So let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. Yes, tech and social leaders, talking about politicians generally, need to align to human needs and not ideology and democracy. Demographics as well, that's part of there. But it needs to be about needs, not necessarily kind of like groups of people. Tech are kind of like, because tech has realized that it affects the bottom line, then, you know, that's why UX designers exist. Yes. But in terms of social, you know, leaders, politicians, do they think about human needs? They think more in demographics because they can understand it easier, and that's generally truthful, generally. So how might we help day to day? This is the bit where it might be actually quite useful. So it's not just a thought piece. The thing is that I feel as though trust is such an obvious, it's such a given. It's such a given that we don't think about it a great deal. Because we're UX designers, that we're being empathetic, we're trying to help the users as much as possible. And, you know, crossover with business needs as well, which is always the issue. So, sorry, PMs. The thing is, what we should do is facilitate trust and design with honesty, which is part of the kind of Dieter Rams' 10 principles of great design is, you know, be honest. Yeah, design honest products. So how might we do that? So these are some of the things that I think are a good way to start. So I think right from the get-go, I personally, in the work that I've done over the years, I like to think about things from, look at the principles of the product or the project that you're working on. It gives an opportunity for transparency and really good work to throw in some responsible design principles in place. It's a great tool for decision making from a really practical perspective, because if if a seagull stakeholder comes in to shit all over everything and fly away, then they can then you could say, does this feature align to the principles? So you can always go back to them. That's always a good thing. And the good thing is, when we talk about collaboration, actually, this aligns with this. I talk about collaboration quite a bit, to be fair. Workshopping it with senior management, senior stakeholders. You know, getting them involved from the start means that you can, if you have problems with buy-in in design, in research, or anything like that, then involving them in the principle side of things. It's kind of conceptual and a bit of fun. They'll think it's a bit of fun, but it's deadly serious from your perspective, because you can really use those principles to back up the work that you're doing. Design systems, so touched upon that with your buttons situation. So central source of truth for things. I mean, I've got an example here of Polaris from Shopify, which I really like because it brings in lots of different, it's a proper design system with guidelines and, you know, UX patterns and UI patterns and a component library and everything together. So you can enshrine those design principles that you created and pop it in a design system. And if you can get that design system, if you can get the buy-in to make it open source, wicked. Accountability can therefore be accountability to the people who use your product. So they can go, well, wait a minute, I had this experience with the sales team and it wasn't aligned to your principles, and that's good. And yes, okay, it results in the sales guys aren't going to be too happy, and yeah, the buy-in, it may be difficult, but it's good marketing if you speak to your marketing guys, heads of marketing, and say, you know, oh, this is really good PR to have a design system in the industry, shows that we're really forward thinking right now anyway, because everybody's starting to do it, so perhaps that won't be for too much longer. But it also aids efficiency, so you can speak to your, you know, chief operations officer and be like, you know, it's good to have it because we'll be able to do things quicker. Be honest in your content. Content is something that I don't feel it gets enough of a spotlight on things. And if there's any content designers in the room, I'm sure that they would probably agree. But we are all designing for content. You know, we're not. Yes, we're designing for people, but for content to be flowed into it, whatever that content may be. So just be honest. It's a really simple one, and it's kind of slightly verging on marketing here, especially this. So did anybody see this? This situation that happened from Innocent Smoothies? This is, so they did this and put it on, it was just a joke, like, oh, you know, autumn's come in, you can get your Conker milk. Turns out Conker milk is super poisonous. So they were like, it's not real, you know, don't milk them, don't eat Conkers, that's really bad. You know, and Monzo does a similar job actually in terms of their blogs and being really honest about how they're actually more expensive than their competitors, but they can talk about the other things. And it's that honesty is going to breed trust. So, yeah, back to the solid principles. That's why I put it first. If you have principles in place, you can always refer back to them. So, yeah, anybody who knows me could probably see this coming a mile away. Accessibility, but be welcoming and inclusive. Accessibility, read this book. It's a fantastic book. Go to Accessibility London. I've totally cross-sold at 2 different meetups now. Come back to this one as well, yeah. Yeah, Accessibility London, go there. Read A Web for Everyone. That's a fantastic perspective. It's about it's designing accessible user experiences. Really one of the best books I've read on design from my perspective, and I don't read a great deal, so I'm just, oh, that makes me sound bad, but it's true. So diversify, so be more inclusive in kind of user recruitment, you know, go across different communities and ages. There's not, in my opinion, there's never enough age-inclusive design out there. Okay. Be an advocate for context and nuance. I mean, I hit you with 12 minutes of context, so I'm obviously going to say this. This may require buy-in for research. That's going to be a problem they may have if you want to get as much context. But I'm talking about the kind of like, you know, the product that you work in may be in a large organization, but what's the ecosystem that product works within? Can you know, collaborate across teams and really kind of understand the whole ecosystem to create a better product? And then where does that product fit within the service? That service could be conceptual, but it's still a service that you provide to someone. And then how does that fit within the organization, within the industry? You know, there's many layers from which what we do, you know, inhibits. So yeah, think high level and low level. Workshops, yes, I'm always a big advocate for workshops. You know when to stop is the is the key finding from Jamie. I think the other thing is that collaboration is key throughout all of these things. It's a really key thing. I'm always advocating for making sure that you keep everybody informed. Extracurriculum out of scope testing, yeah. So I worked on the Bank of England website, and it was a really great project. However, the scope for testing, because it was an agency, the scope for testing was incredibly limited for such a project that it was like appealing to a mass market and a specialist market all at the same time. I just went and did extra testing without asking, I think you should absolutely do that. If you don't have scope or budget for testing, just go and do it anyway. You know, because you should have pride in what you do. You know, like you should, like, and I know it sounds really like judgmental, but like the thing is that if you have pride in what you do, you want the best results from a design. So therefore, testing is going to get you that, even if you haven't been able to do any research. At least you've done some testing. And then, yeah, don't employ dark patterns, which should be a given. It's kind of ironic, this including on this slide. But yeah, obviously bad tricking users will not create trust. You're going to have a fight with marketing on your hands on there, but that's always going to be fun. So, I'm 1 minute over. Oh, damn it, I thought I'd got it under 20 minutes. So let's summarize. So, utopian ideologies of self-regulation, they don't seem to align with our reality anymore, with tech as it's matured. And you know, the future with quantum computing involved and owned by governments and tech firms, they have such the processing power is so great that this regulation and surveillance issue will just become greater and greater, and it will know. And if people don't talk about it, which is why I'm talking about it, then it will just get swept under the carpet by Brexit. And then finally, systematic change needs to happen. I can't, you know, that's the elephant here. Like, I'm giving you things to do from a low level in the hope that we can, you know, influence the high level. Because at the end of the day, we're designers and we should embody that change as much as possible. It's going to be death by 1,000 cuts. You know, and we all need to start thinking about this because I don't see enough people talking about it. So, yes, embody trust and be honest with your design. Thank you very much.